Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, March 15th, the Ides of March. Watch out if your name is Caesar. And we are joined by our all-star panel of top local journalists, Josh Molina, man of many hats, Nick Welsh, executive editor of The Independent, and Callie Fausey, staff writer for The Independent. All right. We have to say that the first district remains sort of the most interesting story of the week. I mean, it's been so long that they were counting votes that it's Roy Lee's victory has become normalized. But take a step back, Josh. It's kind of a big deal, huh?
It's stunning. It's shocking. It's like the biggest political upset that we're ever going to have, that we've ever had locally. It's unreal. I mean, I think now we're kind of settling into it because we have this prolonged vote count and we kind of sort of like dipped our toe into acceptance, but it's it was an impossible scenario. Like there was no way Doss Williams would ever lose to Roy Lee, but it happened. And then I guess the reason it happened is everything everybody was saying about him all came together in the worst possible moment for him. And so you had all of these people who were angry with him, upset with him, and they maybe sat out voting or they voted for Roy. I've never seen the media so unified
Such as
against
it is.
against one candidate, and that was huge. And I know the independent didn't endorse against him, but the independent has great power in this community with its endorsements, and that was significant. And all like I think I wrote in my story that everything bad happened all at once to create a perfect storm for Doss Williams to lose.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
everything caught up with him, and that never happens. Like karma is usually not real, but in this case karma is real, and just totally changed the face of local politics. Doss Williams can come back. Does he want to come back? I don't think we should be writing his political obituary, but what we're experiencing right now is just stunning.
yeah. It has not happened that anybody can remember at the Board of Supervisors where, a member of one party knocks off an entrenched incumbent of that same party. Usually it'll be like, okay, I'm stepping down, and there'll be a fight amongst people who want to take it over. I think it wasn't the last supervisor who actually got knocked off as an incumbent was David Yeager, who was a Republican who got beat by Gloria Shoa, and that would have been way back in the early 90s, if not the late 80s.
You remember,
And
don't you, Callie?
what's that? Yeah.
Callie and I were just commiserating. We didn't remember that one. That's all.
Yeah, that's how far back it goes. I mean, so for Doss, who sort of is the icon for sort of grassroots organizing applied to Democratic Party politics. And that was his strength. That was how he sort of crashed the party when he first ran for the city council. It was like, I'm not waiting for your invitation. I know how to organize the voters, and I can do a get out the vote, and I'm going to do this whole progressive environmental, Joe Hill campaign. And that's how he got elected in the first place, and that's been his strength. And I think there's a whole karmic issue which Josh attributed to, and it does seem after 21 years, anybody can make a lot of enemies along the way, and Doss kind of surpassed that. But I also think you do have to look at low voter turnout. This was an election where the Democrats underperformed and the Republicans overperformed.
Well,
And
Joan Hartman overperformed.
Joan Hartman, let me get there. But in general, the voting was way down. It was like, I don't know if this is still an accurate number. At one point, the turnout was 20% lower than it was 4 years ago. And so what Doss's specialty is, and the Democratic Party's specialty is beating the bushes with these last minute pushes that brings out all the sort of wait to the last minute voters. And this time, those voters didn't come out. And what we see that was really the most interesting detail, aside from this, in the election results, if you look at the Democratic presidential primary in Santa Barbara County, the turnout was 21% voted for Joe Biden. 21%.
21%.
Biden won with 21% in Santa Barbara County. That was of the Democratic voters bothered to cast a ballot. I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. In the Democratic primary, 21% of the Democratic voters bothered to vote. Biden won that. In the Republican presidential, where Trump won, it was 54%. So the Republican turnout in the presidential was way higher than the Democrat. So I don't know, that really didn't help Doss. There was no
But 20,
uptick.
but 21% of a much bigger number is the same as 40% of a smaller number. I mean, there's just a lot more Democrats is all I'm
There's a
saying.
lot more Democrats, but the Democrats are not as religious and as disciplined in voting. So you need a lot more Democrats to sort of deal with the Republican. They're going to vote no matter what tendencies. I mean, it's not 100%, but it's closer.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, I don't want to spend all
It's
the whole show
It's
on
a
this.
numbers thing as much as a karma thing. Is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yes and no. I mean, they've got every excuse in the world. Oh, it was Spencer's fault. Oh,
We're
Darcel
not going there,
there.
but if this
Oh, we didn't do this. Oh, it's all Trump voters.
Jerry,
Why
if
don't you
this was
take a
in
look in
November-
the mirror? Take a look in the mirror, dude.
Well,
Grow up.
okay.
Take responsibility for your loss. Not you, Minik. I'm talking about the other guy.
But if
I
it was
mean,
in November,
seriously.
Doss would win.
This is what adults do. They take responsibility for their own performance, but not him. Nope. And now they're going around saying, oh, Roy Lee's not a real Democrat. Give me a break. They're going to decide who's a real Democrat and who isn't a real Democrat. I mean, it's just insufferable. And it just, their behavior since the end of this has just shown exactly why so many people voted against him.
Jerry, there's a new chapter of Outrageaholics opening up in Santa Barbara. And I think they might have room for you in that one.
I do want to, if I could maybe get in the
Real
middle
quick.
of you two guys. I think that's why it's so shocking is because, yes, we did have low voter turnout, and that is karma. Like, that is exactly what karma is. These things came back to haunt him. It's ironic. He's the greatest campaigner ever, and he ran the worst campaign ever.
He did.
All of these things lined up to be like, how can this happen? And I think the learning lesson, if I could be pundit here for a second, is I'm sure Doss is watching. He might say he's not, but I will say, the road to redemption begins with sincerity and authenticity and actually caring about what the person you're talking to says, not for your strategy down the road, but for actually wanting to know and feel and care what they want in that moment, and not pivoting and shifting and sculpting to make it work for you. And so he did that with too many people, and then boom, the light bulb goes off all at once, and everyone says, wait a minute, we see through this. And it was only 500 and whatever, 10 votes or something like that.
I think, yeah.
And so what that means is he lost literally because he had one too many bad conversations with people who decided not to vote for him. And let's just be real, Jerry, his decision to not come on your show lost him votes. And I heard from people. I had people come up to me and said, I have voted for him in every election for the last 20 years, but if he does not respect the role of the press and the media and the legendary Jerry Roberts, who is an ethical, award-winning journalist who in this community is
Okay, Josh,
movie
get a room.
about it. No, but Nick, it matters You do not do that strategically for somebody who knows so much about strategy against Jerry. It shows an entire disrespect of the media. And Jerry's little diatribe at the end, which was republished in the Journal, that's some of those 510 votes. So that's all I got to say is it is all these things, but it's also just be better, be real, be authentic, and care more about the people you're serving.
All right, Callie, now you see the problem if you don't make the show. So, I'm just,
We'll
I'm
really be
just-
boring.
all right, let's talk about schools a little bit. At the Santa Barbara Unified, approved what, like 100 positions being eliminated for next year, Kelly. It doesn't necessarily mean they'll be eliminated, but it certainly augurs bad for the budget, and then probably most of them will be. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, so the district is grappling with, the loss of COVID funds, like $60 million in one-time pandemic era funds, which they're mainly blaming for staff reductions, which are happening now. So yeah, I think it's like a little bit over 90 positions are threatened to be eliminated, because the district is really just grasping for any pennies that they can get at this point.
Yeah. And are these teaching positions or non-teaching positions, or what? How would you characterize them?
So some of them are classified positions. So that's custodians, that's campus security, those are youth outreach workers, those kinds of roles. And then some of them are certificated positions, which teachers fall under the umbrella, but teachers are safe from these layoffs, which is probably good because they've had such high turnover anyway. It wouldn't make sense to fire more teachers, but they are cutting the services of teachers on special assignment who kind of help with like curriculum changes and that kind of thing, and also counselors. So like a lot of counselors at the high schools are being eliminated.
Yeah. At the same time, we're having all these mental health issues. Now, one of the things so they have settled though the contract with the professional unions, correct? But not with the teachers union. Where does that all stand?
So they're still in mediation with the Santa Barbara Teachers Association, and their next mediation session, I think, is in April. But they came to an agreement on increasing hourly compensation for the CSEA, but they still have a few more tentative agreements they have to reach, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. All right. And then I just want to read what Hilda's statement was about this. She says, we must acknowledge the emotional toll that uncertainty can impose on our staff members and their families. It's a reality that weighs heavily on the hearts and minds of many and of those who have dedicated themselves to this district and this community. It is not unrecognized. Is that translated from the Swedish or from the Norwegian? I mean, I can't believe a professional educator wrote that. Hasn't she ever heard of the active tense? Jeez. I just, that one really got me. The other question I have is there seems to be some conflict over how much the district is required to keep a certain amount of money in reserves, correct? And there seems to be, are people saying they shouldn't have any reserves, or are people saying they have too much in reserve, or what's the whole issue about that?
So a common kind of grievance raised by teachers is that the district puts more money in reserve than they are required to. So they're saying there's too much in the reserve that could be used to pay staff, keep staff around. And, like a really common complaint, or I guess like suspicion that district employees have is that the district is hiding money So like moving things around in the budget to make it look like they're broke, or like they only have, you know, $4 to pay teachers. But yeah, the teachers say like, oh, there's so much money in reserves. What if you cut down, you know, on the travel budget, or that kind of thing. So they're very, very suspicious and distrustful of the district's budget and where they're putting all the money.
And they seem particularly obsessed about Steve, what's his name? Venzo?
Even,
Yeah,
yeah, the new chief operating officer.
his salary.
The musical theory teacher that Hilda hired from LA Unified School District, her old friend, Steve Venz, yeah.
Old colleague, Steve Venz, who she created a shiny new position for in Santa Barbara.
All right. And then the other question I had, they're saying, well, we got to wait and see what the governor's going to do on this big budget deficit. But we're community funded, right? We're not basic aid, right? So that's paid by the property tax. So I guess it's just specific programs that they're concerned about from the state.
I think so. I think it's specific programs because, yeah, we are community funded. So we're property taxes. But some funding for, some programs they get from the state.
All right. And then we got this other education story going on down in Carp. Holy cow. Where the district fired a teacher, middle school teacher, who happens to be head of the union. And then he was ordered reinstated by one of these state credentialing boards or whatever. And now the district has sued the credentialing board. And so all of this personnel stuff that's normally behind the scenes and all confidential is out there in public now in this lawsuit. And I got to say, wow, there's a lot of stuff in there that, I don't know, you could feel like the district may have been justified. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's pretty divided. You know, I've heard people who say, you know, this is just a form of retaliation against Jay Hotchner, who's the president.
You mean the lawsuit itself?
Yeah, the lawsuit, his termination in the first place, they say was a form of retaliation against him. And, you know, to be fair, the district has been found guilty of retaliating against Jay Hotchner in the past. But looking at the lawsuit, looking at the evidence, the 100 or so pages of student testimonies and that kind of thing, like it's a lot. It's
a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. They interviewed a lot of students, and so I can kind of see both sides, I guess. But it really is stacked against him. Like there's some undeniably creepy things that he's done in those court documents.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing, it was a long process, whatever. It wasn't a trial exactly, but I think they had 100 kids or something. I mean, it was a lot of testimony. All right, we'll see where that one goes. Nick, speaking of people with employment problems behind the scenes, the chief librarian at the main library and her deputy have suddenly been disappeared, like those people in Argentina used to happen. I mean, what happened? What's going on with that?
Well, they were not pushed out of any helicopters, as far as we know. What we know is that the library director, Jessica Caliente, who's been there for 8 years, and her right-hand assistant, Molly Weta, are not coming into work and won't be for, we don't know why, and we don't know for how long. The supposition is that there was some workplace transgression was alleged, and they have to investigate it. And pending that investigation, they will not be at the helm. It's sort of calls to mind, though the facts are very different. Ariel Sharon, the city attorney, who was let go after an alleged screaming match that he had with a fellow attorney. I have no idea what happened here, but what I do know is that since Jessica Caliente moved here 8 years ago from Lompoc, controversy has dogged her. Even her defenders and supporters say her bedside manner leaves a whole lot to be desired, and there's absolutely no touchy-feely. A lot of extremely decorated library employees have quit to take jobs elsewhere. There's been a significant brain drain. Now, on the flip side, people would say she is a visionary and that she is really focused on shifting the library from the 19th century into the 21st century. She's opening it up for kids more aggressively and more, social media friendly than books. I think there's a middle ground that you can do both. These have been persistent complaints for a long time. Whether they have anything to do with this particular episode, we don't know. It's
how about the project, the expansion, or whatever it is that's going on? Is that her fault too, or no?
That project was started before she got here, and I don't think that a library director is in charge of public works projects. And the construction that's going on at the library has been one oops after the next, and it's going to be who knows how many years before it's all done. It's certainly over time and over budget. I don't think you can hang that on her.
You can't hang that on her. And who was the decision maker that would have suspended her, I guess, if that's the right word? Is it the library board or the
It was the library board and the city council late on Tuesday night, I think, or it was a Monday night. They were all notified in writing by email. This is what happened. I believe it would have been ultimately it would have been HR director, their call, or it would have been the city administrator, Sarah Connect. They put in her place Renee Irely, who is sort of famous for being a no-nonsense, get shit done person over in the city administration. And she's a very competent person, but again, libraries are delicate operations.
Yeah. All right. So we'll look forward to next week when you learn.
We'll actually figure it out.
When you got this all who's on first to hear. Hey, Josh, speaking of never-ending projects, City Council was back on parklets this week. And I guess came to a final decision or didn't come to a final decision. What's the latest there?
Oh, well, there's the State Street thing. That's not this. These are parklets in other parts of the city, sort of on the side streets. So these are parklets that spill out into the public right away. So the city essentially said, and this has been ongoing on, you're going to need to get rid of all those. COVID is long over.
Get rid of all of them.
Yeah, and apply for a new one and go through a permitting process. And that permitting process costs several $1,000s, $5,000 more if you're in the coastal zone. And it's a big cost. And then you have to go through design review, and you have to have K-rail or some kind of barrier that protects people from driving by and wiping out your parklet, as we've seen on a couple of occasions. So it was that discussion. There were some small business owners in the Funk Zone who spoke out at the meeting.
I felt bad for that guy with the
family. The family of Monies said, we're not a corporation. We can't absorb this $10,000 cost or whatever it's going to be by the time we're done. And give us some help. Waive this, delay it. And so that was the council discussion. And so the council decided that this $2,500 fee, application permit fee, you only have to pay, I think it was $150 up front, and then the balance once you actually are ready to build it, or once it's actually completed. And so that was a way of delaying out the payment. So it's not the big State Street thing, but it's everywhere else where you have a parklet on these side streets and you spill out into the public right of way.
Do the State Street restaurants have to go through the same process that these people do?
Yes, they do, but it's like on a different sort of path and plane, and that's not what they were talking about on Tuesday. You know, Coast Village Road was wiped off completely. They can't have parklets out there. They decided to eliminate that because those businesses want their parking back. And I think there is another block around State Street, around the 1300 block, that's sort of exempt as well, one of those side streets. So it applies to most of the city, but not State Street, not Coast Village Road.
All right, and then they were talking also, the council, about the Paseo Nuevo project where we're supposed to get 500 plus units of housing, but now the question is going to be, I mean, they've just sort of signed off on this very preliminary agreement, as I understand it, and already everybody's kind of circling around saying, well, this project isn't good enough. It doesn't have enough low-cost housing. What was that all about?
Well, the big rub there is that the housing authority wants to be part of the development, and they're saying we can contribute, we can create, build as much as 30 to 40% of the 500 units to be housing authority below market rate. And so they want that piece of it. The developers, Alliance Bernstein Commercial, and they own the leases, and the developer, I think it's Georgetown, they are very resistant to this. They said, you know, for this project to pencil out, we need as much market rate as possible. So there hasn't even been a sit down between the city and the housing authority to even have these conversations. But Rob Fredericks says, you know, we can do this part of it, and you should sit with us and talk with us. So that's the issue. That's going to be the controversy, is how much can Alliance Bernstein put up with this local community pushback to have more below market housing before they say we're done and we're going to sell it, and you guys, city, you don't have any say in it.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening is that, I mean, first of all, the plan is not a plan. It's a pre-conceptual plan is the latest language. And so we don't really know what's being proposed, but it's in the ballpark of 500 units, and it could be as many as 7 stories up. And so what Santa Barbara is going to, if it is built, it would be the biggest downtown development that we've seen since forever. And the sense of urgency that city staff has and the developers have in making this thing go as fast as humanly possible cannot be overstated. They're freaking out that the longer we wait, interest rates will go up, construction costs will go up, everything will go up. Right now, it doesn't pencil out. Right now, if it was built today, as whatever it is, the city would have to be throwing in a big chunk of money to underwrite the cost of it.
It doesn't pencil out for any rate of housing.
At any rate of housing is what they're saying, and you better not think about slowing this down, because otherwise, if you do, we're going to be out of here. Or the city's saying they'll be out of here, and it won't be 41 years until their lease expires, and they'll just let the place go into a ghost town and zombies will walk on State Street. And it's a pretty dire picture. So, you know, for Santa Barbara, where, you know, if you just look across the street at Delegado Plaza, they've been talking about various plans for redesigning that for over 100 years, right? The things move slow. And so now we're going to have the biggest thing you could ever imagine that may not make financial sense, even when you're thinking about rich people. And now, like, how many poor people, middle-class people can you shoehorn into this project so we can feel good about it? It's not an easy fit.
All right. Callie, you had a kind of a weird story about rags on East Beach.
That was great. That was great.
What? Explain explain what that's all about. Unmute yourself.
Myself. Yeah, so the city just hit like a major milestone in their project to rip out all of the ice plants, which are called carpet weeds, along East Beach, and replace them with 3,200 Central Coast native plant species. One of which is ragweed, which is a really common allergen. So I guess, yeah, people with allergies should be cautious.
And what's with the rags? What is that? What's that all about?
That was just a play on
Oh,
ragweed.
okay. That was just in
Mhm.
the headline. Okay. All right. I
Yeah.
had to say, yeah, okay. I thought I misunderstood. So how many species?
3,200.
Wow.
3,200 plants, 5 different plant species, I guess.
I have to say, I never minded the ice plant.
That is because you're a colonial interloper.
Is that why? Yes.
Well,
Colonial.
in that case, let's get rid of all the palm trees too, because those aren't exactly native to Santa Barbara.
Good point.
They're exogenous.
Really, I mean, is there something bad about the ice plant other than the aesthetics?
They're invasive. Sorry.
Yeah,
No, they
they're
are.
invasive. They suffocate native species. They alter the composition of local soil.
Hmm.
They're just, yeah.
It's like the pigs in the Channel Islands. Anyway, we
They're
just,
like the cane toads in Australia that have taken over.
all right.
You will notice there's not a backyard in Santa Barbara that doesn't have ice plant in it. It is
Exactly.
It's
clearly
everywhere.
taking over the town.
I know. And it hasn't bothered me. I don't know. No
Jerry,
ice plant ever called me a Croatian.
you're too busy being annoyed by Josh Williams. What
I-
are you going to do now that you don't have
and all
Josh
and
Williams
all
to
those
kick
around him. Hey, Nick, so your old friend Bob Hansen passed this week, and as Josh was saying, he was a familiar figure around City Hall. You want to say a word about him?
Yeah, I mean, Protest Bob Hansen was a major character about town. He was sort of a class clown and court jester, homeless activist. He ran for city council 7 times, for mayor twice. I think he got 2,000 votes. But he was part of a rare window of time in Santa Barbara where homeless people organized around civil rights, not about like whether or not there was going to be a shelter open, but their civil rights. At one point in Santa Barbara, homeless people could not vote because if you didn't have a fixed address, you could not register to vote. And it took a lot of litigation to change that so they could register at a P.O. box. And Bob Hansen and Nancy McCready were part of a coterie of activists back in the 80s who took that to court and won. He was involved in, he just loved being he liked being a loud noise, and he liked being in people's way, and he liked telling the truth. And he was part of a blockade against Highway 101 at one point, shut it down for half an hour. Even if you liked him, he would drive you crazy, and not everybody liked him. I think he got arrested more than 20 times. But I will say that the town is infinitely more boring and dull and more business-like without him and without that whole vibe.
Yeah, and Josh, you're going to have Nancy, his partner, on your podcast.
Oh no, I mean maybe, but I'm doing an interview. I'm doing a story.
okay.
So Nick wrote the story, so I knew Bob too, and I'm going to write something as well. But Nick's point is really good. We don't have any more of these characters at public comment like Bob, who would come and really be kind of part of the council. Like you would expect to see them
What
every
about
Tuesday.
Anne Marie?
She doesn't show up anymore and she's on Zoom, but you would expect them as much as you would expect to see the mayor for them to be part of the conversation. And that's what's really sad. We've lost all of those characters, and Bob, the best thing about Bob that I remember, and he was abrasive and he was all those things Nick mentioned, but he said what people were thinking out loud. And we don't have much of that anymore.
Yeah.
And he was fundamentally a sweet guy underneath everything. And so he should be heard in a way that other people can't be.
Yeah. All right. Farewell, Bob Hansen. Callie, what are you working on?
I'm working on quite a few things, actually. Yeah.
How was
that's
we never talked about your ketamine experience. How was that?
Yeah, no, it was really, really interesting. And I toured Tahiguis. Is that how you pronounce it? We were talking about it earlier. Tahiguis.
Yeah.
I toured Tahiguis with Laura Capps, Gabe Escobedo, and some of the other people from the county, and I was telling them about the experience. It was completely out of body. It was crazy. It was like 1 second I was in my head, and the next I was just catapulted into outer space. It was quite the experience. But yeah, I was talking to them about it, and they were asking me what I had to do the rest of the day, and I told them I had to go eat a cheeseburger for Burger Week. And Laura Capps turns around and she's like, ketamine, trash, and cheese. I was like, yeah, that's my job.
Nick, you find any new burgers this year?
You know, I had the rare privilege of eating a peanut butter and jelly hamburger at the and that kind of was my reaction. It was, here's what you can say. It isn't nearly as bad as it sounds. I don't know if that gets it to good, but it isn't as bad as it sounds.
All right, Josh, who you got on a podcast?
I have Rob Fredericks, Executive Director of the Housing Authority.
Oh, that'd be great.
He's breaking down the whole sale level. He actually has shoehorned his way into La Cumbre Plaza now. So that's a little bit of a newsy thing that'll be in the podcast.
Does that mean we're going to get a specific plan?
No, but he did say on my podcast how he wished the city had gone the specific plan route, because I don't want to bring it up again, but because
city tried
somebody did to that effort really hurt affordable housing potentially. So
well, I think just the subliminal message that your watchers may not understand, this is a diss on DOS, because DOS blocked the specific plan. And I will say,
because Macy's is going to close in 4 years.
Okay, so here's the deal. I think that really hurt DOS. I mean, that one is definitely a pie in his own face.
You have lurched into the truth. That's where it all started to go downhill.
I can't imagine any planner, design review board, or anybody who he bashed during that meeting unnecessarily. By the way, when you're in power, don't punch down. You got to be a leader and positive. Anyway.
Well, let me tell you, Sheila Lodge, the ghost of Sheila Lodge, and she's still alive, is haunting Josh Williams.
All right, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina, Callie Fausey, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.